America, we got to get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. Hey, Joe Walsh, former Congressman Joe Walsh, with you this Friday. What a week it's been. Thank God it's Friday. What a week it's been. What a day yesterday it was. And I'll probably touch upon that with my guest here in a moment. But thank you for listening, everybody. Hope you've had a good week. And as always, take a little bit of time this weekend and chill and take care of yourself. I became a Democrat this week. I formally joined the Democratic Party this week. You know that. You've read why, you've heard why, you've listened why I've done it. I wanted to have a conversation with a good friend of mine. I'm going to introduce her right now. Sophia Nelson, a dear friend of mine, a fellow political traveler. There she is. She's a Renaissance woman. Author, columnist, speaker, trainer, founder of a really cool, interesting new Virginia-based organization that I want to get into with her in a little bit. It's called the Redefining Freedom Center of Virginia. We'll get into that in a little bit. Sophia, welcome, my friend.
Thanks, Joe, for having me. You have had quite the week. As I was telling you in the green room, you never sleep, you never rest.
Before we get into my week, I want to get into yesterday, the country's day yesterday. That nuclear war between the most powerful man on the planet and the wealthiest man on the planet. Sophia, 24 hours later, what's your takeaway or two?
Well, I think everybody's still trying to digest what happened. The president of the United States of America is arguably the most powerful human being on earth. And Elon Musk is certainly the richest man on earth. And they've been bros and brothers and besties and inseparable since before the inauguration. And then all of a sudden yesterday, you could see the buildup, Joe. Elon's been critical of this bill over the past week on some interviews. And then the Twitter escalation hit and all hell broke loose. So the post-mortem is that people don't know whether this is real. Is it some type of game they're playing? Are they really mad at each other? Is this to distract us? And I think we're all waiting to see if more escalates today or if it quiets down and what happens.
And they're both extremely powerful men. And so this is also, everybody had fun with it yesterday, but this is and could be a really dangerous situation. And Sophia, last question on this. It just makes our country just looks so bad right now.
It does. I mean, I think that the German chancellor was here yesterday in the Oval, and, they were talking about D-Day, which is today, June 6, 1944, the day the world was liberated by brave American soldiers, young men of, 17, 18, 19 years old, just slaughtered on the beaches, dying for freedom. And I have a grandfather that served in World War II. You probably do as well, have family. And so we honor them. But, Trump didn't even understand what D-Day was.
Yeah.
We have a president who, no surprise, just is not well-read. He's not, a historical or a history buff. He doesn't understand the Constitution. And then you see this fight with Elon Musk, and it got really low.
Yeah.
And brought up the Epstein files, they start calling for his impeachment. Then you had Bannon and his crew, the Trumpers, saying Elon should be deported back. Then Trump is saying, we'll cancel your contracts. And so once again, Joe, you see that this president uses his presidency in the Oval and his platform to retaliate, to be vindictive and not rise above. Elon is, for all intents and purposes, he's a rich guy who's eccentric and a little strange, but the president of the United States should not be engaged in this kind of conduct. It's just, think about Obama wearing a tan suit and the media lost it.
They're both bad men. They're both bad men, very bad men in positions of power. Okay, so let's let's dive into this, because what I think is interesting, a conversation between you and I introduced you as a fellow political traveler. Politically, you and I are almost brother and sister. We've been in this homeless, politically independent space for a number of years. The Republican Party, whatever this thing is, left us. This week, I formally joined the Democratic Party. I became a Democrat. And I know you, good friend and fellow political traveler, you probably don't agree with that. And I want to have a conversation with you about it. When you heard it, what was your reaction?
Well, my first reaction was to text some of my cohorts at the Forward Party, and particularly our leadership, say, how the hell did this happen? How did we lose to the Democrats? And everybody kind of chuckled and said, well, we didn't know. But listen, Joe, I think that right now, if we're being honest, the Democratic Party is pretty much the only sane of the big two parties that we have. The Republicans are just on some different stuff. I don't even want to talk about them.
Yep.
So it's not that the Democrats are bad or there's anything wrong with that, but I think they're a little lost right now. So I'm hoping that with you there, as someone who comes out of the Tea Party, which is a populism of movement, people being fed up and tired in that white working class, middle America, where you come from in the heartland, I think you can really be helpful as an advisor and as someone to help them to see they have to do a better job at messaging and connecting with those voters, because Trump has really done well with those voters over the last decade and really taken a lion's share of those voters over to the Republican Party, which isn't the Republican Party I grew up in or you grew up in at all. So I don't think it's bad that you're a Democrat. I just wish you had come over to the independent side and helped us to build that second political party.
And that's the point I want to drill down in, because that's an important one. Look, I've ragged on our two-party system for a long, long time. For a long, long time, I've publicly said we need a third party, a fourth party, a vibrant independent movement. I still generally, Sophia, believe all of that. It's just I keep coming back to this. I truly believe our former party is an existential threat to this country right now. And so if I want to stay in the political fight right now, I have to join, as you said, the sane party. Democrats have their issues, but they support freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. So I feel like this is the immediate fight for the next number of years. But the flip side of that is what you just said. The system needs reform, and we do need other parties in. So I opted for, I need to fight the fight in front of me right now. But you're focused on a different way to fight it, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the reality is that the two parties that we have now, Joe, are overwhelmed by money. The influence of money in our politics is an abomination. If you look at the last election, Vice President Harris raised $1 billion in 107 days. Elon Musk wrote checks totaling $250 million. One guy, folks, one guy, which is why you saw this outsized influence. And if you look at races around the country, Joe, you know this, the primary process, something like 30% or less of the public participates in the primary. So once you've won your primary in something like 90% of districts in this country, you've already won the election in the fall. So people don't even need to show up to vote, because the primary, depending on where you are, a Republican district, a Democrat district, you're going to win the general. So we have very few competitive races, which I think makes a third party, or what I like to call, we call it Forward, the second party, because we think the two major parties are the same for all, not in sense of, like you just explained, the Democrats certainly are not conducting themselves the way that the MAGA Republicans are. However, they're in the same system. And so if you were to talk to Democrats who flipped over to MAGA or followed Trump, they feel angry and upset and not heard. I'm an African-American woman, and African-American women are the most loyal group the Democratic Party has, and they're not happy with the Democratic Party right now. You saw Christine Jean just wrote a new book that's coming out in the fall. She's leaving the Democratic Party. This is the White House press secretary under Biden. and she's becoming an independent. So what you see, Joe, is that if you look at polling data, the majority of the country vastly identifies as independent politically. The problem is there's no home for independents. So what we're doing at the Forward Party is, and that is Andrew Yang, Christy Whitman, and Carrie Healy are the co-founders of it, the last few years, we're actually building under the FEC rules. We are in 30 states. I'm state vice chair in Virginia. We have to run a certain amount of candidates. We have to be on ballots. We have to raise a certain amount of money. We have to start from scratch, which is what we're doing. And we're committed to building that real party, not just independence, but actually a real political party.
So when people are listening to you and I right now, and they think, again, I'll go back to this, in many ways, politically, you and I are brother and sister. We agree on most issues.
Yeah.
Is it as simplistic to say that when people ask, well, why are Joe and Sophia going in different directions here? Is it as simple, Sophia, as to say that you are focused on fixing a broken system, political system? I am focused on immediately trying to defeat MAGA and Trump.
Yeah, I think we both have the same ends in mind. We want, as we head into America 250 next July 4th, 2026, this republic is in danger. And that's not hyperbole. That's not making statements that are not based in fact. We are moving towards an autocracy fast. We have a president who openly violates the law, does what he wants, doesn't honor court orders, is pay for play in a way we've never seen. Joe, I was thinking about when I was young and worked on the Hill, and we were looking at the Clinton money trolley tree, and these guys paying $5,000 to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom, and that was like a big scandal.
Yeah.
You're selling pardons for $1 million.
Yeah.
It's simply stunning where we are. And so I think that you're in the battle. You're in an immediate, yes, we have to stop this now, which is important. What we're trying to do, though, is build that infrastructure that allows people in third parties to actually have a place to go and to run and have the infrastructure to be successful.
So if I were to criticize me, I'd say, Joe, your aim is to help the Democratic Party, but then you'll, in essence, bolster a two-party system. You'll help. And if I were to criticize Sophia, I'd say, Sophia, it's all good and well to try to reform the system, but damn it, our house is burning down right now.
Right. I think both are true. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think both of us, again, I think it's all about whether or not you think of the immediate need, which is right now to stop the bleeding, or do we need a longer term fix? Well, the answer is both. We need to stop the bleeding. The midterms, listen, I can't say this seriously enough. And to all your viewers, and I know you have a lot of folks on here who they comment and, they're saying things, but listen, on a very serious note, like I said, 250 years next July 4th, that's where we are. And Benjamin Franklin was asked, what do you have? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it.
Yeah.
I am deeply concerned that we will not keep this republic because, Joe, you and I have talked about this offline. I had no idea that we were as fragile as we are in terms of checks and the balances. And I don't think the founders, Hamilton and those guys, never foresaw, I don't think, that one party would completely acquiesce to a rogue executive as the Republicans have in the House and the Senate. So Congress has basically put itself out of business. The only thing holding the line right now is the courts. And I don't know how long the courts can hold up if the marshals won't enforce what the courts say, because Pam Bondi's the attorney general who's loyal to Trump. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sophia, as you are working with the Forward Party and you're working on trying to reform the system, in the meantime, as elections come up, do you find yourself tending to vote Democratic because to defeat MAGA?
Yes, since 2016, I had never voted, except for Obama was the exception in 2008. I'd never voted for a Democrat. I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and I voted for Kamala Harris in 2020. I didn't have an option. I wasn't going to vote for Donald Trump. I had hoped for somebody like a Nikki Haley or a Marco Rubio, when they were different human beings, when they actually stood for something, when they stood against Trumpism, and then they capitulated. And look at Marco Rubio. He's unrecognizable right now from his
man without a soul.
Yes. And so when you look at that, we didn't have great options. If you were a moderate Republican or a center right Republican like me, you were a little more conservative than I am on some things. But I'm more like in that Christy Whitman, Jack Kent column, which is were my mentors.
Yeah.
They don't exist anymore. That party doesn't exist anymore. So who else am I going to vote for other than the Democratic nominees, which is a problem?
Do you agree with me that that party that we once belonged to ain't never coming back?
Yeah, it's done. What I think will happen is you got to go back to 1854 and the founding of the Republican Party. And you got to go from 1854 to 1860 election, where Lincoln is a nobody out of nowhere and wins the presidency. You know, that party, the Whigs, was the other political party at the time. And then they kind of fell by the wayside. If you go back and look at the comparisons, there's interesting parallels between MAGA and the Whigs. Yeah. And then the Republicans come in, a new party, and well, here we are. And now that party is, I think, under severe threat of being non-existent probably in the next 20 years or so. MAGA's going to burn out, folks, just like you saw Musk and Trump go at each other. All of us knew that fight was coming. That wasn't a surprise. I don't think we thought it would play out on Twitter the way it did, but everybody knew that was going to end up because you had two egomaniacs, two very powerful, narcissistic men. They were never going to not get into these fisticuffs. The question is, why aren't Republican senators? What happened to Joni Ernst, Joe? She used to be a good senator. She's a army, officer. She's a woman in combat who's been sexually assaulted. One of our best and brightest. And look at her.
She loves the gig, and so they emulate Trump to stay in power. Sophia, so like 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, I was a conservative Republican. And then 5.5 years ago, I left the Republican Party. 3 weeks ago, I was a conservative independent. This week, I became a conservative Democrat. In your mind, is that possible?
No. If you
explain yourself.
No, if you'd have told me back in 2010 that somebody who was in the Tea Party would eventually become a member of the Democrat Party, I would have laughed at you. Just like I never would have believed this country would elect Donald Trump president of the United States. I didn't think it was going to happen the first time, and damn sure not the second time, but here we are. So I think that the question or the conversation we're not having that needs to be had maybe in a different time is the impact of the last decade and social media and how things have shifted so dramatically in our public discourse and our lack of civic understanding. If you look at some of these interviews, Joe, with members of Congress, with cabinet members, they don't know what habeas corpus is. They don't know when D-Day is. They don't know the basic functioning of departments and governments and the levers of power. Trump put a 22-year-old kid in charge of counterterrorism. He was a gardener, folks, a few years ago. Is that okay with you? I don't care if you're a MAGA or a Republican. You can be that. But if you love your country, you don't want your country to have incompetent people running the levers of government that keeps your family safe.
So perfectly put. So to respond to your no, and I loved your no, you can't be a conservative Democrat, and the whole Tea Party, the Democratic thing. I get that on paper, that's quite a leap. 2 responses, and then I want you to respond to them. As you and I have articulated, these are unprecedented political times, which call for unprecedented action. I believe. Again, you and I believe our democracy and the rule of law is hanging by a thread. So we are called to do unusual things to defend it. But then the second thing I'll say, Sophia, is my thread, like my lodestar, the constant for me on this journey has been, I was Tea Party because I believe in freedom, the Constitution, and the rule of law. I fear government overreach. That's what made me Tea Party. I'm still that way. And the Tea Party morphed into MAGA, which is government overreach on steroids. I would dare say it's authoritarianism. So that's been my thread. Even if on specific policy issues, I will clearly have some differences with my Democratic colleagues.
This country was founded in rebellion. Let's just put it
Amen.
on.
Amen.
The founding fathers, and if you've never watched Sons of Liberty, folks, watch it. It's a mini series. It's outstanding, but it's a really great exposition of what happened. And they rebelled for exactly the reasons you outlined. Small government, not a king that can tax me when he wants. It can send soldiers to kill me when he wants. Some of the behavior of King George III and Donald J. Trump I are very sensitive. And if you're objective, which brings me to my second point of why I think this country's in trouble, the misinformation, disinformation, lying that takes place on a day-to-day, like right now it's daylight and it is 11:20 in the East. In MAGA world, you can say it's 10 o'clock at night and it's dark outside, and that's the truth. And if anybody challenges it, you're the enemy and you're in the deep state. That's the kind of crazy we're dealing with, Joe. So it's not about the Tea Party people were right with what they believed in government. The deficit had gotten out of control. The little guy was being crushed. All of our jobs were being shipped away. This has been going on for 20 years, folks. This is not new. And so I think the question becomes, what do we do to preserve the union? And I think being a conservative Democrat, you're going to find is going to be a challenge, because really the progressives run the Democrat Party. And this election was not about eggs. It was not about the economy. It was not about any of that. It was about the culture wars. It was about who's going to be in charge, who's got the power. Too much of these women, too much of these minorities, too much of this DEI, too much of these people on campuses protesting. And while I agree with the way the Jewish people have been treated on our college campuses is an abomination. I went through this experience firsthand, the cancel culture. It is a real thing. It's not made up. The problem is when one side does it and we say that's wrong, then the other side comes in and does it, and we don't want to call that wrong. We're hypocrites, and we're talking out of both sides of our mouth.
So the test is, I'm now a conservative Democrat. I believe in my bones that to win, the Democratic Party needs to be big enough for a conservative like Joe Walsh and a progressive like AOC. I believe that. You and I know that every state is different, and progressives can win in certain districts and states, and conservative Democrats. Remember when you and I were young, there actually were conservative Democrats. We forget that.
Yeah. What was it? Joe Casey, was it the governor of Pennsylvania? And he was pro-life, and they give him a hard time. And it was wrong because he was a really good governor, but they felt like because he was Catholic and, a pro-life Democrat, they wanted to hide it in the closet.
And the South used to be littered with that endangered species we called a conservative Democrat.
Or blue dog Democrat.
Blue dog Democrat, exactly.
Virginia. Abigail Spanberger will most likely be our next governor because she's a blue dog Democrat from a district it's pretty diverse, but she's a CIA officer. She's also a mom, a wife. She checks every box, but her politics are very centrist. She's not a lib, definitely not a progressive, but she's not real conservative either. So Virginia, as you know, is a purple state, and we flip all over. So, I think she probably wins here.
My respond to this, and last question on this, and then we'll get to your center. I've been a fighter my whole life. I think the Democratic Party needs to fucking fight. And I do believe the Democratic Party needs to be bigger. This is a two-part question. That's a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Two questions to you, Sophia. you did identify the Democratic Party as it is a sane party, maybe wrong on a few issues, but it's a sane party that still embraces democracy. Critique the Democratic Party for me. What do they need to do?
Well, the biggest thing they need to do immediately is to stop the circular damn firing squad that they have going on continuously around whether or not Joe Biden was mentally able, whether he was capable, whether he was well enough, da 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 da. This one's shooting at that one. This one said that one. The Democrats are really good at lacking discipline when it comes to sticking on message and staying united, whereas the Republicans are really, really, really good at following Trump off a cliff.
It's a cult.
He says they fall in line, they stay on message, whether it's good or bad. Republicans don't tend to kill each other the way the Democrats do. It's number one. Second thing that the Democrats need to do is stop attacking Kamala Harris and blaming her for 107 days of, let's face it, Joe Biden was not going to beat Donald Trump. I don't care what anybody says. Biden had aged. You can't argue it. That debate was disastrous. Mm-hmm. Trump had the assassination attempt, and that was it. This image of Trump fist up, fight the power. I got blood coming down, and I'm the man. And then Biden looks feeble and stumbling and bumbling. It was over. And for Harris to step in 107 days and do what she did, I think probably saved a number of Senate seats and House seats that had Biden been on the ticket, it would have been a much bigger avalanche.
I do not blame Kamala Harris for anything. I thought she ran a very good campaign. Joe Biden stuck around too long. Last question on this, Sophia. Part of why I did what I did as well was to hopefully give permission for others in our space to do the same. Could you ever see a day when you will be not forced to say, but choose to say, okay, with the way things are right now, damn it, I'm going to formally join the Democratic Party?
No, I'm never going to be a Democrat. I'm never going to be a Republican. That ship has sailed. Again, I will support Democratic candidates and even Republican candidates. There's a couple of Republicans here in the Commonwealth. Again, we tend to be a little different in Virginia, as in some other states, that are still moderates in districts that are safer, where they can still be those country club, lack of a better word, type Republicans. I will support those candidates as well if they're for good governance, honesty, integrity, law and order, the things we talked about, freedom. And so I think we need to vote less for parties and vote more for people and what they stand for and what they represent, Joe. But the reason I choose not to be a Democrat, we'd have to do a whole show on that and how I feel about how the
And Sophia, that's why I wanted to have you on, because I think this is just really cool and instructive, because you and I are tied at the hip on most things. And we've each chosen a different way to express the way we want to help what's going on right now. Right. And both are good, valid paths. Hey, so let's talk about Redefining Freedom Center, the Redefining Freedom Center of Virginia, a new organization that you have founded and launched. What the heck is it?
Well, first of all, people go, Sophia, what do you mean by redefining freedom? Well, again, as we head into America 250, that's next year, folks, our 250th sesquicentennial. I'm challenging us, myself, to be bridge builders, to re-engage with civics, to reimagine what freedom looks like for all of us, an inclusive freedom that says what the Supreme Court said yesterday in its unanimous decision, that discrimination against any person in this country, white, black, yellow, red, gay, straight, is wrong. Boom. It's unconstitutional. So reverse discrimination against whites is every bit as odious as discrimination against a person of color, a black woman, whoever. When we get back to our foundational principles of who we are, that e pluribus unum, out of many one, when we get down to Charles Thompson's motto in 1780, e pluribus unum, 13 separate colonies, right? that were Massachusetts and Virginia had nothing that were alike. One is a slave state, another is a free state. They are dramatically different. Adams and Jefferson, good friends but arch enemies at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at this and you look at who we are, we're different people with different beliefs, different views, and that's what makes us unique in all the world. We've lost that. And what's happening now, and I do want to acknowledge the people in the comments because I'm catching some of them, and I wish we could do a show, Joe, where we just answer questions.
Respond to, yeah.
But I think that what I want to really say is the Republican response to definitely the left, the progressives, I think were out of control. There was cancel culture. There was, you better have this viewpoint, and if you don't support these policies, you're out. I was a professor in a university. You know my story. I was protested for asking a civil question about a cartoon character. What are Christian parents? It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And that was acceptable because that's what folks were able to do on these college campuses. And now with the Trump folks coming in, they've course corrected, but they've overreached.
Doing the same damn thing.
Attacking Harvard and taking away Harvard's funding because you don't like Harvard's politics. They're a private university, by the way. I was at a public university. That's wrong. And so what I'm saying with this center is there is a way for us all to believe what we believe, live in that pursuit of happiness, that life and that liberty, and do it in the way we want, but also respect and honor our fellow countrymen who may be different, who may believe in a different God, who may practice a different belief system, and we can still be Americans, and we can still honor freedom, and it can be inclusive for all of us, not just for some of us. We've got to have these conversations, Joe, like you and I are having about this bridge building and how we find the things that are in common and stop with the tribalism and the hatred, the anti-Semitism, the racism, the doxing, it's nasty, and it's not going to sustain this republic.
It's called pluralism, right? It's living in a country where we acknowledge there are differences and we are tolerant of those differences, and we don't have to agree with our fellow citizen, but we are tolerant. Sophia,
Joe, what do you think? Let me ask you a question. I hate the word tolerance.
I love it.
It means I'm putting up with you, but I really don't want to. We got to come up with a better, I don't know what the better word is, but that's what I mean by building bridges, because I don't want to just tolerate you. I want to understand. I don't have to agree, but I'd like to understand and dialogue and feel like what should have happened on my college campus was, professor, explain why you asked this question, what Christian parents should do. And let's talk about how maybe the LGBTQ plus students feel, whatever. And let's sit on the campus lawn, have coffee at this academic center, and let's debate it respectfully. That's not what we do now. Now it's cancel, shut the hell up. We'll throw you out. You're getting fired. You're done. And that's what people are pissed off about.
It's all about, we've got to gain understanding. If we understand the people we disagree with, we are less likely to hate them.
Absolutely.
And consider them to be our political enemy.
Absolutely.
Sophia, where can folks go to get any info or to find out about
the Redefining Freedom Center, Virginia.org? I mean, we're doing really well with the fundraising and with the engagement. We'll do a formal launch, and I'll start doing TV and stuff in the next number of weeks over the summer. But Joe, this is important because we're in trouble, and we've got to revive, particularly with our young people, what freedom means, what it looks like, how we have it, how we protect it, how we preserve it, how we defend it. And if we don't do that, when you and I are in our 70s, 20 years down the road, we got problems. I don't know where we're going to be.
Sophia, people have forgotten what real freedom means. Redefining Freedom Center of Virginia.
Yes.
Check it out, and we can't wait to hear more from Sophia as this thing launches and grows, and we're going to have you on again. You are the best, my lady. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, everybody. Be brave out there. Be brave.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been The Social Contract with Joe Walsh.